Good evening and welcome everybody to a special special Park and Rec meeting for Wednesday, May 1st at 6:30. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their evening to go over a very important subject. So hopefully this will not be too long of a meeting. We'll be able to have an answer to our question. The matter on the table is in regards to the tennis courts at Needham High. That we have some options here in front of us, and I'm going to go through the options, and Stacy, feel free to interject or correct. But this is what I'm seeing. And then after, if you can answer some of the questions that I know that we have, and then we can kind of have a brief discussion on this. So as it stands right now, I'm calling this option one, but just to kind of go through, option one is we stay as planned, that we submit the tennis court article to town meeting this coming Monday. I don't know which article number it is. I apologize. I do not have my booklet in front of me, but we go as is. We planned as to go, and we let town meeting decide what's going on. The option two is we've been proposed to pull this particular article and then resubmit at special town meeting in the fall. Defer, excuse me. Okay. So if I can just kind of go over the scenarios for option one, and Stacy, this is where you can kind of jump in, and then for option two. So if we stay with option one, we let town meeting decide. If town meeting decides to go through with it, great, we've crossed that hurdle. We still need to get the planning board's approval at a future meeting, because we can't go out to bid or even ask for documents for bids until we have the approval of the planning board, correct? Stacy?
Correct.
Okay. If we go to so that's option one, and everything goes well, we still have to go through the planning board process. All right. Still with option one, if we take it to town meeting and we get denied, what I'm assuming, or excuse me, from what I've seen, is that if this article gets denied by town meeting, the earliest we could go back would be to resubmit to CPC in December of this year, and then be put on the town meeting article for May of 2025.
Correct.
Okay. Option two that we had talked about is pulling the article now and actually having it resubmitted for the fall special town meeting. Again, we can still go through that plan. At that time, knock on wood, we would hopefully have the planning board's approval that we present to town meeting in the same type of fashion that we would for May. And if that does happen, for the timeline wise, the project would not be started till at least, you would say, what, the summer of 2025, or even late summer of 2025. Again,
I'm sorry, you're talking about option two?
Yes, option two, if we decide to present in the fall of this year.
So technically the money becomes available 21 days after town meeting.
Okay.
So if we already have a bid in hand, because you can technically bid before town meeting and go to town meeting with a hard number.
Because we would have approval from planning.
We would have approval and we would have more time. If the construction company could start demolition of the old courts and some land, like site work before the winter, and then they could start back up again in the spring. Obviously, we would have to work with the schools on the parking lot and things like that, but they could start demo. They wouldn't be able to do any of the weather dependent work until late spring. But they could start the site prep.
But that would mean
the stormwater things.
Sure. So that would mean that the tennis court technically would not open until, let's just say, late summer of 2025. So the high school season would still be at Mills and Newman. Okay.
That is correct.
If we hypothetically fail at the fall town meeting, we would be then back in front of CPC December of this year and going through the whole process again of resubmitting and being in front of the town meeting in May of 2025. That if that's the, I'll deem it, worst case scenario, we are, at least in my opinion, now a year behind of getting this project done. Because we wouldn't get funds till July of 2025. You wouldn't start construction till, say, fall of 2025. That the courts technically would not be open till spring of 2026. Compared to if we go this May, they could be open spring of 2025.
I have some concerns about
Sure.
that, but we
Ju-
can talk about that when we get there.
Sure. Okay. So does everybody understand the options that we're looking at here? I know, again, I deemed them as option one and option two. Everyone see the timeline and the calendars that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Dina, looks like Dina has a question.
Let's hear it, Dina.
I'm assuming that this is probably what you're gonna start talking about now, but why the change in the options?
Yep, we'll go through both of those things
Okay.
now. And if
Alright.
you have any questions after that, Dina, we can answer, hopefully.
Okay,
So Stacey, now I'll yield the floor over to you to kind of fill in some of the blanks of questions, comments, concerns for option one, questions, comment, concerns for option two.
I'll start with option two. I don't have any concerns. We can go into details and you can ask more questions about that, but I'll go back to option one. So option one is, we're putting forth a project for 8 tennis courts at the high school, replacing the 4 that are there, adding 4 more. There has been significant pushback by the neighbors, both on Rosemary and Webster Street. We have been in front of the planning board. They continued our hearing now twice. They've asked us to add in plantings. They have asked us to move the court slightly. They've asked us to come up with different, like moving the courts away from the neighbors. There has been both hearings at planning board lasted about 2 hours. There was significant neighborhood presence at both of them. We do not go back to the planning board until May 14th, I'm sorry, which is after town meeting begins. So we do not have a decision from the planning board on this project before town meeting. In the last couple of days, I have received numerous emails from the Office of the Town Manager, who's getting emails from neighbors opposing the project. Those neighbors have also reached out to FinCom, and FinCom has added a discussion about this project to tonight's meeting. So I was just made aware of that about an hour ago. So
Okay.
FinCom will be discussing that as well. Do you want me to talk about my personal concerns, or do you want me to go? Like, there
Let's-
is some positive feedback from the public. The schools are 100% in favor of this 8 courts, the tennis team and tennis coaches. There was a handful of people, significantly less, that were for the project at the planning board. I know some of the commissioners have received contacts from other people saying, please go through with this.
Mhm.
But that I have only gotten one of those emails from all of the other emails that I have been streaming into my Outlook in the past couple weeks.
Okay. I know, Michelle, you had a question. Can I ask just one more quick follow-up? In
Sure.
regards to other boards, CPC was for this. The
Correct.
finance committee, before you gave us that information about a minute ago, was an approval for this. Are they still? Or CPC, or could we still say we have their full support? And finance committee, I know they're having discussion about it, so who knows, that might change. But as of before, we have both those boards' approval.
CPC did approve this project, and it will move forward if the commission decides to move this project forward in May or
Okay,
next week. It is May.
got it. Do we have any inkling of the discussion that the finance committee is going to have, or?
I do not.
Okay, all right. Michelle, you had your hand raised. I apologize. Cut you
Yeah,
off.
no, that's fine, thanks. So 2 questions. How do you, in instances where we're gathering public comment from other projects, how do you weigh that relative to other feedback? Because there's always going to be negative, there'll be individuals that are not supportive. So I would assume we've dealt with this before, and I'm sure we can't, accommodate everyone's request, but how do we weigh that against the schools being in support, like the huge support, and of course there's, negative feedback. So how do we weigh that, and how are we doing this at this point and not having, we've been having discussions for months on the tennis courts. Why is it coming to this point? Did we go through the process that we typically do to gather feedback to have that work into the planning process this time, or did we somehow miss that? And then the second point is what is going to change between now and the fall to change the sentiment of the abutters? Like, what are we think is going to be different between the feedback now and the feedback that we will continue to have, I would expect, if we were to push it to the special town meeting?
I can answer the first one. Actually, I can answer both, unless Chris, you want to go first.
No, go ahead.
So Michelle, the one thing that I will own is we should have gotten to the neighbors sooner. We should have had more conversations with the neighbors sooner. We were supposed to go to planning board first. Originally, that was the meeting that was set up. That meeting was canceled by the planning board because they didn't have a quorum. So instead, our first meeting was the CPC meeting, which is the first meeting that the public could attend. There was some pushback at the planning board meeting about that process and how we should have gone to planning board back in the fall. However, we can't go to planning board without an actual project, and the project had not been designed at that time. So that was the concern. I don't know about what we've done in the past. I know that we have hit pushback on the pools, and I know we hit pushback on Field of Dreams. I'm sure we hit pushback on other projects. This is the first one that I've come up against, so I'll defer to Cindy and Chris on that one.
I mean, yes, I mean, Michelle, you hit the point on the head, and Stacy, great job saying that too, is that we've never had a project that is 100% fully backed by everyone in the community. You're always going to have people that say, well, what about this? What about that? We've even seen that with other projects that aren't ours. The town common comes to mind, where we were ready to start building. People were asking to, well, what about if we do this? What about if we do that? It's, we put out public meetings and we listen to feedback as much as we can, but I mean, we have to look to the bigger picture of what we can do to benefit the programs that are going down the line. That, I mean, it is a great question of how do we weigh the support or the unsupport for certain projects of how we do it. And that's what our job as commissioners to do, is to say, take the good, take the bad, and kind of weigh those out and see what we need to do to make something work.
So what is our goal between now and special town meeting? Why would we defer?
So, go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
raise too.
So to me, the main risk, the biggest risk we have is that the planning board comes back on May 13th, which is too late for us to go to town meeting, and they put conditions on our project. And they have indicated that they will be putting conditions on our project. One will be the hours, which I'm 99% certain we would agree to, right? The other could be putting up a screening between the tennis courts and the neighbors, and that could be a wall, it could be a fence. It could be very tall trees, very tall shrubs. We don't know the cost of that. And that could be a long run of screen. And that cost may or may not be in the project budget. We don't have it in the budget. We may or may not have those dollars. And I think that's our biggest risk, is they come back and the planning board puts a condition on us that we have a lot of trouble meeting. I don't have any idea what it will cost to put a screen there, some kind of screen, natural or otherwise, and I don't have any idea what kind of a screen they would require. So I think that is our biggest risk, and that's what would be different between now and fall. We would know that.
Can I piggyback off that comment? So say, and I'm just throwing out this number just so we're looking at numbers. Say it costs another $250,000 for the planning board's add-ons. How are we going to be able to come up with that 250? Because we can't change the amount that we've gone through for CPC. So say it is 250, we can't pull that out of fresh air. We can't, we asked for 2.5, we didn't ask for 2.75. So again, if they ask for it, you're right, we're going to have to look for it, but it will not be part of the CPC article because we've already submitted.
Right. So could I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
The interesting thing on
Can
I
the,
got you, Dina. You can go, I'll get you to you next.
We'll get you next, Dina, sorry.
all right, so I think the interesting thing on this is that the town manager and Katie King, she assistant town manager or deputy town manager, they're both recommending that we defer this project to the fall, that we wait till the planning board finishes their hearing and that we bring it forth in the fall. And they don't seem to think that will be a problem. So that's interesting. The other thing is, the chairman of the planning board, I'm gonna say this, I was at this meeting, at the League of Women Voters meeting Monday night, and he said to me, I think you should go forward. And I said, how can we go forward if you haven't closed your hearing and voted on it, and we don't know your conditions? He said, well, there will be conditions, but they won't be bad. I don't know how he could say that. He said it to me right out in the open. I don't know how he could say that because he's only one vote on that board. I guess I'm sure he holds a lot of influence, but they haven't voted. They're the ones who continued this for yet one more meeting, which puts us in a terrible bind. But I don't really know how to interpret what he said, quite honestly, because I think it puts our project at risk, which is disturbing to say the least.
Mhm. All right, Dina, I apologize. I cut you off and we went a little bit there. So Dina, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. So a couple things. There are ways as far as containment that you can make the fence higher on the side of where the residents are. That shouldn't, be too much of a different cost. I mean, we're not talking hundreds of thousands. And also, I feel like the residents are going to complain, whether it's now, next year or the year 3000. I mean, these people need to remember there's not going to be people playing tennis there 24/7. Like, this actually bothers me because this is an example of something that's really needed. And I just think that continuing to push it down is not going to be good for it. And it's going to be with who suffers the most is the tennis team at the high school. And that's unfair. I mean, I think that, I can't vote tonight, but I strongly support like keeping as is. And then if needs to be some adjustments to the plan in order to afford a higher fence on one side or some sort of containment, then isn't that something that can be done? Or, I mean, it's not approved like it has to exactly be that plan, right? The way it's laid out.
I'm sorry,
that-
repeat it again.
Like the planning board has to approve that plan? They
Like,
have to approve the project.
right, so maybe instead of if their stipulations are ours, which like Cindy said, we would agree with, and then some sort of containment or a higher fence. So maybe we tweak the design a bit to allow for that. I just think I worry that pushing it down the line, it's risky, right? It's risky. We've seen this before. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I think that the neighbor's gonna complain no matter what,
Okay. Michelle, you have your hand raised.
Stacy had her hand raised too.
I'm
though.
sorry.
Oh, you beat me to
Sorry,
it,
it's,
Michelle.
it was blocked in the frame
Go
of your
ahead.
window, sorry.
No, I think just to Dina's point, I think we've dealt with these projects that have been pushed off because of like, I wouldn't say missteps, but like some scheduling issues that have led to delays in projects where there's an expectation around these large user groups that things are moving forward. I mean, the softball field comes to mind, and there's negative feedback coming from one group, but there will be immense negative feedback coming from another if we need to push this any further to the point that we're trying to support all of the kind of field or, you know, where the playing space for our varsity players, and tennis has not had the best facilities, has no facilities at the high school, has had to play, you know, in you know, less than ideal situations across the town. So I just worry that the backlash of delaying this is going to be severe, in that we're going to have to deal with the negative comments on that end too, because we have a lot of support coming from a lot of user groups that are wanting to move this project forward.
Okay,
I would
good
agree
point.
with the backlash for sure.
All right, Stacy, you're up. Your hand is raised.
Thank you. So ultimately, this is obviously your decision as a commission, but my thoughts about this project actually have nothing to do with the neighbors. I agree, whether it's this month, next month, or next year, we're still gonna have negative and positive comments. My concerns are more financial. When we went to the planning board the first time, thinking we would get approval, the idea was we would go to bid and have a hard number to go to town meeting with. With the extras that they may or may not be asking us to add on, none of it was in the plan. The higher fences were not in the original plan. The plantings or the screen, not in the original plan. I did talk to Jonathan Charwick, who's our engineer person, I don't, landscape architect, something, from Activitas. He thinks we have enough money in this project built in to add those things on. But he made a comment yesterday when I spoke with him on the phone that he said something about unless we hit ledge. And I don't know if we will hit ledge, and I don't know if there is a concrete number. If we go and say, for instance, we get approval at Main Town Meeting, we go out to bid and this bid number is higher, we have to value engineer out certain parts of this project. There's nothing to value engineer out. There's no extras, there's no benches, there's no seating. It's literally tennis courts. And so my concern is if we end up overbid because we don't have a hard bid number, there's nothing to value engineer out of it. And we cannot go back to town meeting and ask, or CBC and ask for more money for a project that we asked for approval for. I mean, we can, but it is not recommended. The ledge, we don't have the fact that we have a concrete number. I'm not sure what this bid number is. I've gotten mixed reviews on whether or not any construction company can pick this up and start before the fall. So we may be missing, I have a feeling we're gonna miss spring 2025 season regardless of when we get this money. Here, talking to a couple other towns about their bid processes. And then one of the neighbors who has sent emails to me and the town manager, I don't know if she has sent it to FinCom, but it's definitely gone to planning board. The question of the neighbors on Webster Street. So in any given project, there's a 25-foot setback from the neighbors. We cannot go within 25 feet. Well, the current courts are only 11 feet from her property. Now, back when they were put in, they had some sort of waiver. Chris Heap thinks that this waiver will stand up. But I don't know that that's best practice or if town meeting will support that, because we're over half as close as we should be to her property. I'm not sure we can actually move the tennis courts 11 feet away, because then it's going to cut into the parking. But that is another one of my main concerns, is that particular situation with the 11-foot setback. That is on a retaining wall.
Got it. Dina, I see your hand raised.
Quick, 2 questions. First, very quick, what's ledge?
It's like if you dig down and you hit rock and they have to basically blast it to move it.
Okay,
Like if
Okay.
we had to like remove the quarry, we would have to use basically TNT to blast it out of there. And so that's the only way to, like, you can't dig out ledge, you have to blast it, which makes the cost go up significantly.
okay. And then the second question is, so then why don't we, would it be a terrible thing to make it within the same budget, you go to a 6-court plan instead of an 8-court or a 7-court plan?
It's a good question. It's the question the neighbors keep coming. The neighbors want a 5 or 6 courts. 6 courts doesn't gain the school tennis team nor the rec department anything. They would, the tennis teams would still have to practice on 2 separate courts. They would still have to play matches on 2 separate courts. 8 courts puts everybody in the same place, freeing up the rest of the town courts.
Okay.
And then I ran some numbers for our summer camp, and we could get everybody off the wait list for our tennis lessons and our summer tennis camp with 8 courts. We can't split our tennis camps or our lessons because it means double the amount of staffing,
Okay.
Which is double the cost to us.
double the cost. So that is what the neighbors are pushing for. They're not pushing to stop the project, actually. They're pushing to bring it down and make it 5 or 6 courts as opposed to the 8. The schools have written a letter of recommendation from the athletic department saying they only basically they need 8.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Thank
even
you.
going down, if I may, and Cindy, I'll go to you after. It was brought up numerous times, like if we did go to 6 or 7, that green space that's up at the high school, it wouldn't be used anyways for anything else. We have never permitted anything there. The high school's never had anything there. It is literally, for lack of a better term, the pickup area that people can go to. That if you were to put 6 or 7 courts there, you now have a smaller space that you cannot put anything organized. It would just be random space that no one can fully use for any sports programs. So it doesn't benefit, in my mind, to do 6 or 7. 8 is the way to go because it helps more than less.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
I
Love
got
to hear you weigh in. And so I'm sorry.
You
Cindy had
skipped
her
over
hand-
Cindy.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Cindy, you had your hand raised first. I know. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jim. I'll be brief. So, I am probably voting, to defer this, depends on what the motion is, but I am probably voting to defer this project. I am extremely reluctant to push forward with a project that the town manager and the assistant town manager are recommending, that we push off. I think that isn't the smartest thing. I think if we go forward, they will support us. I don't have any doubt that they would speak against us, but they're recommending that we hold off. And to me, that we should weigh that pretty heavily. And the other thing is, I am very concerned that the planning board is going to put in some unreasonable conditions. I'd like to think that they listen to the neighbors so that they could consider their issues and address the ones that could be addressed, and the ones that they can't, we just can't. That, right? Every project, there are people that are happy and there's always some that aren't happy. You can't please everybody. But I'm concerned that the planning board is not considerate of cost. They said that, right? When they look at plans from a builder, they don't worry about the cost. They say that's not their concern. At least that's what I heard. Chris and Stacy, you were at that meeting. I think you heard the same thing, where they said, well, we can't be concerned about what these costs are if we impose conditions, because that's not our concern. So those two things make me very worried and think that we should defer the project. The fact that town management at the most senior level is saying defer, and that the planning board has not been willing to close the hearing and tell us what the conditions are. So I would vote to defer, and it pains me to do this, because I agree with you, Dina, that this hurts the athletes, this hurts the tennis team, and my opinion is not a really good reason for this, but we're just caught in an unfortunate situation.
So I talked to somebody on the planning board. He reached out to me, and he seems to think the only stipulations they would put on it would be the hours, the no pickleball, and then just some sort of containment, either a net or higher fence on the side of residents. I mean, a net can definitely, I mean, I can't imagine some sort of netting, you know, it could be that
al-
much cost I can't even think right now. You know what I'm saying, right?
cost prohibitive.
Prohibited,
Thank
yes.
you.
So it's not the most expensive thing. However, we went to town meeting and CPC, the town with a specific number that didn't include any of those things. And sure, there's contingency built in, but I don't know if there's enough contingency built in, because fencing, plantings, even the stuff, it still has a heavier cost than you might think.
Right. So, but
So
can't we
that's
s-
my concern. If we have to value engineer something out of it, there's nothing out of it. Like there's no fluff in this.
But can't we go to bid and then if they come back with those things added and they come back and say, you know, how much it is, we can't afford it, then we push it down the line? Is that an option or no?
Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we can't go to bid until we have the seal of approval from the planning board. So we can't get to point B unless A gets satisfied. So we would know going to bid what those asks are from the planning board. It would probably take a little time to find out the money, because I don't think they're going to come to us with an exact figure. They're probably going to come to us with, we'd like to see A, we'd like to see B, we'd like to see C. What that number is, that is something that John Charwick would have to research out to see what the cost figure is on there. So I wish they could give us a number, but they can't, because it's an ask. It's not a, hey, you need to do this type of, or this is what it's going to cost you to do it. That's on us to do.
Right, but I guess maybe I didn't
Mhm.
ask correctly, what would be the harm if we're pushing it through and then all the stuff that needs to happen with planning board happens and we go to bid and we end up not being able to afford it? What's the worst case scenario? We push it anyway, right?
You,
We would have to go back to town meeting and ask for more money for the same project that they already approved.
Got it. Okay, so it would
Mhm.
be like starting. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be like, okay, okay.
And
Or we
that
just-
doesn't typically look great from a
No.
perspective, like, the concern would be in the future, we ask for, say, $400,000 for a playground, and they're like, well, you sure that's the number?
Yep.
And so they would sort of lose their trust in us if we
Yep.
had to go
Yeah.
back and ask for X amount of money.
Okay, okay.
One comment I will say about this, and I'm not trying to throw under the bus certain committees, but that has happened many times before, especially with school projects, where they have had a bid and then the school committee has to come back and ask for more money. Now, mind you, I'm all for the schools. It's fine. Things do happen. I think even there was more money that was needed for the school administration building, that there was a number tacked on. They had to come back again and ask for money. So it's not the worst case scenario, but again, we want to look organized and everything in there, but it has happened before with other committees.
It has. I also think schools carry a little heavier weight than
Oh, I
tennis
agree.
courts,
I'm-
so it's a little bit harder.
No, I agree.
I think
Jim.
Jim's
Yeah,
ready.
Jim, we've been waiting. I'm sorry, Jim.
So number one, I thought somebody from the town was going to be speaking to the group today.
No, she was unable to attend. She's at another meeting.
All right, with the cost, say for instance, it's approved and then they add these conditions afterwards. The added cost is probably not going to be as much as the added cost of waiting. I mean, you build a year later, it's costing 5 or 10% more.
Good
If
point.
you have to go back to town meeting for another 50 or 60,000, which you present as less than the cost of having to put it off. I mean, doesn't look so bad. And plus it saves the town money in the long run, because you could theoretically have the whole project built, not open until you finish the last 5%, which you get the money next spring.
It's actually a good.
theoretically.
Yeah.
Me?
Yes, please.
Okay.
It's all you.
So if we were to defer this project, the team for this with Activitas would actually get approval from the people we need to get approval for, and then go out to bid actually this summer. And with the contingency that they would have to hold their price until 21 days after fall town meeting so that we could sign the contract. So if we had to punt it an entire year, yes, there's significant costs that would incur. I don't know that there would be that many that would incur over the next few months. And I'm just, you know, to go up in front of town meeting and say, hey, actually, we need more money. Because like I said, I don't know how to value engineer
Mhm.
nothing.
Yeah, when you're at the threshold,
There's,
You got
we don't
no
have
safety.
plantings we can take out. We don't have benches or seating or any accoutrements that we can pull out of this project to put in. If they want 15 arborvitaes as a screen, that's gonna be a significant amount of money because we can't put in baby trees. We have to put in,
full
for
grown.
lack of a better term, teenagers, so that they're ready to go.
So if it's pushed to fall town meeting, when could you see the earliest they would break ground and start working on the project would be?
They could break ground as early as 21 days afterwards with demolition and site prep and the stormwater retention that they have to add in for this project. You wouldn't see tennis court prep happening until the spring, but they could get ahead of the, you know, the dirty work.
But Dina, we don't know, even if this were to pass at this town meeting, we don't know that this will be able to be done starting this summer because schedules are very tight from what we've been told. And we're not sure that we will get a bid from a contractor that can do it this summer. So that is a little bit of a wild card right now also. It's not a sure thing.
Right, but I guess maybe I'm not understanding. If we push it to fall town meeting, other than pushing it forward 6 months or whatever, are we taking any steps backwards? Like, is that more time for people to say they don't want the project, or do you know what I'm
Of
saying?
course, yeah. 'Cause I mean,
Yeah, I
we're,
think that is definitely a risk. There are risks on both sides, and I agree with you. I think that is a risk.
the
Okay.
planning board could literally continue our hearings infinitely with question after I know it's not the right word, I'm sorry. Dina's rubbing off on me. But yeah, they could.
Hey, I'm sick.
I know, and I'm not. But yeah, they could keep on continuing and just building up that price tag. Without them
But
knowing.
I think for me, like without having approval of planning board and going to town meeting, I know it's been done before. It just, it feels concerning. And the fact that FinCom added it to their agenda to talk about tonight, I don't know what that means at all.
Well, I mean, guess we're getting stuff at the 11th hour. So, all right, it is now 7:11. I know we could debate this for longer. I know it's, you know, not a typical night. If we feel comfortable, that we could maybe make a motion right now, or do we still want to open this up for discussion?
Can I ask one quick thing? And I know it's
course you
moot,
can.
but I don't understand how it's acceptable for the planning board not to have discussed and voted on something that is part of town meeting. It feels it's very surprising that that's acceptable to happen. So I mean, we were able to meet pretty quickly as a group to be able to make decisions. I don't understand why this is not prioritized to be decided on before everyone's known that this is going to town meeting. So how are we where we are?
Not speaking for Stacy or Cindy, but when we left the last planning board meeting, the level of frustration on a lot of people's foreheads and raised eyebrows was immense because of the hoops that we had to go through yet again. And that's just not from the three of us, and I'm not trying to speak for you two, but that was other town people and representatives of the frustration level was on a level 11 about that one. So believe me, you are in good company of showing your frustration towards the lack of attention on this.
But it puts us in like we're following the right chains, and
Great.
I just don't understand why other committees don't need to be doing the same.
I agree. I wish I could answer for them, but they are run by their chair, and we work as a commission. I wish I could answer for the planning board, but I do not have an answer for them at all.
I just worry that this is gonna be like the softball field. I mean, yes, it's finally there and it's beautiful, but it took a really long time.
And so many like verbal arguments with
Yep.
town members. Like I'm trying to avoid being putting different groups in very uncomfortable, hostile situations in order to move something along that this has been an open dialogue for months and months. It's been on the capital project. There's been a lot of transparency, and we're now being pushed up against a wall at the 11th hour, and we were not able to make like informed decisions. And I am incredibly uncomfortable with shifting the course of this project as we've had planned, and as all of the other boards within Needham have had planned, and have known what the cost and what the plan for the project was.
Yeah, this wasn't a surprise to them, but I feel like we will be the department that gets the backlash.
Okay, all valid points. So as we know, myself and Dina cannot vote. Can I make a motion, Stacy? No, so I can't even make a motion. So,
I can make a motion.
okay,
No, I would, I don't know that you'll like my motion. I would, I
Go
would
ahead.
like to make a motion that we defer the tennis court project until after the next planning board hearing, which
okay,
is May 13th. Is it May 13th, May 14th? Whatever that date is. That would be my motion.
okay. So the motion on the floor is to defer the article to go in front of town meeting for May's town meeting and go to special town meeting in the fall, correct?
That might be the consequence of
different.
this
Yeah.
motion, that
All right, I'm
that
sorry,
wasn't
my bad,
in
I'm
my
sorry.
motion. There is a chance that we could defer this article to the end of town meeting. I don't know if we can make that motion. You can go forward and ask to make it at a time certain. And we could try that. We'd have to get some help with, from the town's attorney.
Mhm.
There is some thinking that town meeting will only go 3 nights, and the planning board meeting is after night 3. So
Mhm.
that would be an
God.
issue. But that would, but that is a possibility. But my motion is just that we defer it until the planning board finishes their, has their next hearing, the end of their next hearing.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we hear a second at all? Okay, I do not hear one, so I hate to
I
say.
am unsure. I'm just incredibly disappointed with the process, and quite frankly disappointed that that we don't have someone from the town here to discuss this, because this feels like this is an issue that requires more conversation and explanation before this decision is made.
Yeah.
So that this feels
Yeah.
really
Okay,
Yeah,
I mean, I feel very
hear that.
I feel very uncomfortable voting, quite honestly, without having more understanding of how we got here. Because it feels like we've just been kind of,
okay,
it's been pushed intentionally. So I will vote, but I'm incredibly uncomfortable making this vote given all that's transpired.
Right. And you know what, Michelle, I think we share exactly how you feel. We all share it. I know how we got here. I don't know why, but I do know how we got here, because the planning board has refused to make a timely decision when honestly they had as much information as we could give them. And that is how we got here. I don't know why they did this. I don't know why they continued their hearing until after the first week of town meeting. I share all your frustration. I agree. We did what we thought was correct. We did it in the order that we could only do it in, and this is where we are. I understand completely. And if nobody seconds my motion, or if you vote against it, I don't have any personal stake in it, other than I think it's the right thing to do, in my opinion, but.
Okay.
And to
Alright.
me, I mean, I second the motion, Cindy, because I don't think we can, I don't think it's responsible for, it doesn't show collaboration with the town if we're voting against, or we're pushing something through without the right information in order to make an informed decision. And so we tried to set it up so that we would have all of that information, and we don't.
Can I make a suggestion that we do not make any vote anyway tonight, that we ask that a representative from the town be included and we schedule another call for this? Because I think like deferring this to fall because we don't have the answers isn't the right thing. Pushing it forward because we don't have all the answers isn't the right thing. But I think I would feel better if there was someone from the town on the call as well.
Stacy.
So I am the person from the town. No, I spoke with Katie King. The town managers, they have 0 vote, and they are 100% in support of this project. Their recommendation is not based on the neighbors at all, because they agree they're going to be the way they are regardless. It's based on the unknown bid number and the planning board not having a definitive answer from the planning board. That's the basis of their recommendation. I can certainly ask them to come, but I think there's a larger conversation that needs to be had about the process in which this happened. But I don't know that is going to get resolved before town meeting. Like, I agree with you, Michelle. I think that we're stuck in this place
Yes.
that we don't deserve to be stuck in. That won't get resolved before town meeting, and I don't know that because we're 5 days away from town meeting, that town management has a whole ton of time. I mean, they're at FinCom tonight, so I'm not really sure if we could get another meeting on the books before town meeting. And the reason that we're doing this is if we are deferring, then CPC has to also vote to pull it from the article before town meeting.
I just think we need to be really transparent that this is not our fault, because we are going to get serious backlash from that tennis community. It's not going to be pretty. And I think that you tend to be the scapegoat, Stacy, and you shouldn't be, and the department does, and we shouldn't be. And I think somebody needs to be very transparent and state why exactly we had to punt this.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and Michelle, I know you were talking, did we get a confirmation that you were going to second Cindy's motion?
I second Cindy's motion around voting around the 13th, and if there's any other, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm somewhere where there's not great service. I just want to make sure it didn't cut off. I would support it, but I would support the fact that we can't make the decision until we can't do that really, right? Because I liked your the caveat, Cindy, that we couldn't vote until the 13th, but we still would need to have CPC pull if we're to defer it. They would need to do that before town meeting. So I don't think that even the hope that we could still get this into town meeting is an option
I
or
mean,
feasible given the CPC
Yeah,
overlap.
agree.
the worst case scenario, if we kept it as is, would to be have to go and ask. I know asking for, I don't know, asking for more money doesn't look great either, but I think it would look a whole lot better than punting this.
Maybe. I mean, I do want to reiterate, there is a high chance or significant, I don't have a percentage, there's a significant chance that whether we go in May or fall, they're going to break ground at the exact same time. And
Yep.
if we defer to fall, then we have a final decision from planning board, we can have a final concrete bid number, and we can go to town meeting with all of our ducks in a row,
Yep.
only to end up at the exact same spot we would if we push this through
Yep.
without, and then potentially get it voted down.
Yep. Could we be proactive
I think
in letting the tennis community know the plan?
Yeah. I mean,
Michelle,
once the
you're
word
gonna
gets
say
out,
something, sorry.
once the word
So,
gets out, CPC is
Yeah.
gonna, know, finance committee is
Well,
gonna.
Right,
Everyone.
and I would say, Dina, that those people were at the planning board meeting, they heard what we heard. So the tennis coach was there, Paul Siegenthaler, a former tennis coach, was there, Diane Federico, former tennis coach, was there, the high school coach was there. So these people heard what we heard. I don't really think we're gonna get a lot of blame. I mean, and if we
Okay.
do, that's okay, right? We can take it. We can defend ourselves. But most people have heard this information. The people in the know, right? So I'm not going to say the greater public, but there were a lot of people at that meeting, and they heard what we heard. But I would suggest, Mr. Chair, we just
Mhm.
go to a vote, and maybe
Yep.
this motion won't be voted, in which case I guess we continue with the project. I don't know
Correct.
what the alternative is.
Nope, you were correct. Stacy, you had your hand raised or just itching your head?
I was just gonna say that, the schools are aware that we were having this meeting tonight to discuss whether or not we would defer. So the schools are already aware. I have talked to Ryan Madden, so while the greater tennis community might not be aware, the schools are aware.
Yep. All right, so I know Michelle just dropped off. We'll wait for her to pop back on because she is one that has to vote. So we
She
do have,
just texted me, yeah, she said they dropped reception, she's gonna try and get back on as soon as possible.
all right. So the motion on the floor, just so we're all on the same page, motion on the floor is to defer the tennis court project to a later date. Pretty close? Yes. That if that motion fails, it fails. If it goes through, we defer. So with that being said, we need Michelle to come back on because the vote is up to Jim, Cindy, and Michelle because Dean and I are not sworn in yet. So it will be a 3-person vote. The drama.
She's coming on.
I
Or
wish we
maybe
had.
there'll be no vote. I don't know if Jim had any more comments. I'm not sure.
I'm
if
sorry.
I
Yes,
cut
you're right,
him off.
Jim. Yeah.
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Wish we had what was that? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Music in the background, the lights coming down. Regis pops up. So can I take the roll call vote? Cindy, Stacy?
Michelle, I think is on. Michelle, can you hear us?
I can hear me.
Yes.
Kind of,
All right.
mostly.
Okay,
We
trying.
will go through this now. I will take a roll call vote by each member. So I will actually start with Cindy Chaston.
Yes.
I will then go to James Rosenbaum.
I'd say no.
I will now go to Michelle Geddes.
Ugh. Yes, I guess. I'm
She's the
so
tiebreaker.
So just to confirm, that is
Thanks, just thanks.
is that a yes, I guess, or a yes confirmation?
It's a yes.
Okay, it is a yes. Dina Hannigan will not be able to vote, and myself, the chair, will not be able to vote. So with a vote of 2-1 to defer the tennis court project has passed. All right.
Thank you.
When is our next meeting, Chris?
7th.
The 7th.
7th.
So that's where it is right now. Stacy, if you can, I mean, doesn't have to be tonight, but if you could, in your day tomorrow, give us a recap of what the finance committee says of their meeting tonight. I think it would be prudent to hear what they had to say, because it could be new information that pops up that we're not, available to right now.
Can I add something that you may wanna,
Sure.
we just gave another court at Mills away to pickleball. Because we
Yeah.
were gonna, we may wanna take that court back.
It
That was
doesn't really
something-
affect, excuse me,
Go ahead.
it
So,
doesn't
Kevin-
really affect tennis, one or the other. Tennis has first priority for the courts. Plus, they use them for school every day.
Right, but you weren't at the last meeting, that the stipulation was that they would have no use at the high
High
school
school.
courts. And we'd give them a fourth court. So we just need to make sure that that still stands, even though
We-
the tennis, you know what I'm saying, Chris?
I hear you. I hear you. What we will do is that we will put that on our agenda for the 7th.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't know when this article will come up. I think it's article like 22 or something.
I think I heard, yeah, it's in the mid-20s.
So we could get there fairly quickly
Mhm.
on night one. I don't know.
But I mean, hate to say, it doesn't matter now. We're pulling it. So we just made the decision. So, all right, listen, everybody, it is 7:30. I really do appreciate everyone for the special meeting on Wednesday. I know people are sick and traveling, so I do appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy day. So I appreciate it. Thank you all. Everyone travel safely. Dina, feel better.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.